Hello everyone and welcome back to theCUBE's live coverage of Fal.Con 2025 here at the MGM. I'm your host, Rebecca Knight, sitting alongside Dave Vellante. I would like to welcome Stephen Harrison, who is the CISO of MGM Resorts, to the show. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you both for having me.
We are here in your kingdom.
It
Thank
is
you for having
a kingdom.
us, I should say.
We do have a castle, Excalibur.
Indeed,
Yeah, you do.
Indeed. So let's get into it, because you have a really interesting job and you've been in this industry for a long time. You've worked in manufacturing, healthcare, and now obviously hospitality. Why don't you begin by painting a picture for our viewers a little bit about how working in hospitality and securing a casino is so vastly different from these other industries that are also really important and highly regulated, and talk a little bit about what you do.
I would think about every resort, and we own probably about 2 miles of the Las Vegas Strip. We also have international operations. But when you think about the complexity, I think it's good to bring into context the resort size. Bellagio is one of ours. It's named after a town in Italy. And I think the town has, it's a beautiful town. And I think the town has somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 citizens that live in it. Almost 8,000 people work out of Bellagio in Vegas here. And when each of these resorts are sort of a city unto themselves. They have power, sewage, maintenance, and then we have food and beverage, dining, sports arenas in some of these locations. We have obviously the casino and entertainment industry there, shows, golf courses, and then everything that goes behind the scenes to protect these. From a cyber side, there's just so many challenges. When you think about IoT, ICS, you think about the digital footprint, and that's before we're even talking about customer data, or like consumerism and the retail and all of those wonderful challenges.
Yeah, so those digital footprints are vast in hospitality and entertainment. You're obviously a high value target. You're facing unique cyber threats, much different than you would think in a regulated industry like healthcare or financial services. So how do you see your sector, your current sector, compared to some of those other ones?
It's very regulated, I would say, from the casino operator model, and where you might have, the FTC or the SEC, or like if you're in healthcare, you might have different manufacturing requirements for drug development and HIPAA and these things. We have different gaming jurisdictions that we collaborate and report to, and we fall under their jurisdiction for those operating models. And those vary from country to country, and then also across the US, obviously, where gaming is at a by the state level. So we might have a dozen different jurisdictions across the US with different requirements and challenges and ways that they would like us to operate.
So is that the really, I mean, it's all hard,
Yeah.
but what's the really unique sort of hard part? Is it securing that edge? Is it, again, that vast digital footprint that you have? Where do you see the gaps generally in the industry, irrespective of MGM specifically?
I would say because there are so many different offerings in the portfolio, that your attack surface is larger than it is at a traditional company.
Right.
And if you think about retail, you're B2B, B2C, and that's sort of your footprint, and you're managing the customer identity. Manufacturing, it's about production and out the door and your channel supplies. And when you think about something like MGM Resorts, hospitality in general, if it's us, Hilton, Marriott, you have so many different avenues for attempts at digital fraud, attempts where an incident can take down operations in so many different ways, and that's compounded by the digital footprint with sports betting and development and everything, and our loyalty program. And
so, I just have another question. My kid goes to UMass Amherst, and sometimes we stay at the MGM in Springfield.
Okay.
And so I would imagine that the clientele at the MGM in Springfield, Mass, is different than the clientele here. People come to Vegas because it's Vegas, right? People around Springfield, they might attract them with, hey, we got some giveaways today, whatever it is, some swag. So my question is, how much autonomy is there with respect to setting up infrastructure, making choices about cybersecurity tools, because that presumably would make it harder the greater the degree of decentralization, more tools, tools creep, hard to manage, or are you able to sort of have a command and control, at least as it relates to cybersecurity?
We are. We have, I would say, an appropriate amount of autonomy with centralized operations. Obviously, we're a global company, but cyber coming under one roof and then having a seat with the audit committee and the board, and then working hand in hand with our CTO and our technical operations. We're in a really good spot, I think, for that. When you look at the landscape across the portfolio, obviously different customers across regional versus sports betting, and when you think about Vegas, everyone thinks about gaming, but the reality is non-gaming revenue is as profitable or more in some cases. When you think about seeing Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, you think about going to Raider Stadium by our Mandalay Bay properties, or the Golden Knights at T-Mobile Arena, which we operate. All of these, it's important to have centralized visibility to enforce architectural adherence and standards, and so that when you're protecting an asset, an identity, a system, that there's no loss in translation from one entity to another and what success looks like.
And the A's are going to explode that, Rebecca, right? Right
across
the street.
Indeed, indeed. So how do you balance that? Because as you said, you are really at the intersection of the physical world and digital security, and also thinking about the guests who are experiencing it all. So how do you balance that in terms of thinking about the hospitality industry that you're in and how guests experience it?
A very pragmatic approach. I think it's not unique. Like, I think in cyber we have all these flavors or blueprints, and they all really work as long as you stick to one and follow it. If you think about NIST, CSF, ISO, CES controls, you can, it's not overly complicated on its face, but it's delivering those controls and mapping them in a way that you're not inhibiting growth and business operations, right? And so you want to be a partner with the business and how you handle that. And so for us, it's really, we focus a lot around identity, segmentation, limiting footprint. We want systems to be centrally managed, but disparate in their ability to impact other operations. And so that's sort of our architectural approach there, so that we can empower growth in digital, and mergers and acquisitions, whatever it is. And really the strategy has to be around centralized controls and a strong architectural adherence enforced across the enterprise. If that's a development pipeline and making sure we're running, let's say, like Crowdstrike container security or something like that across all of our cloud, or we want identity protections, we use the module there for Crowdstrike. And having visibility in one location, regardless if that's Entra or Okta or SailPoint automations or disparate one-off identity services, having a central place where we can manage and enforce controls and checks and balances there, that's what really empowers us for success.
How about this notion of AI as a double-edged sword? You've got the attackers, the adversary is highly capable, very sophisticated. Many feel like security is now even more of a do-over because of AI. As a CISO, how do you think about that? Do you feel as though you're better armed because of AI, or do you feel like, wake up, you're fighting AI now?
I guess it's both. You think about technology in general, and through our history, every, like 7-ish years, there's some sort of innovative, like changing evolution to tech that changes how we work, but AI is sort of all of those things compounded. Obviously, there's the adversarial side where AI can essentially turn any script kiddie into now an advanced persistent threat. And so that means what they used to have to do research and reconnaissance on, they'd have to have some level of understanding into introducing threats into companies. That barrier for the threat actor has been like all but removed with AI. They can leverage it for their attacks, they can automate tasks with it. And so it's important for us as practitioners that we do the same. And it's, I mean, it's oversaid, I think, where people say like AI is not going to replace you. Someone who uses AI is, and it's sort of tongue in cheek, but it's also real. Like, imagine only using half the tools that you're at your disposal to work on any project or task, and when they can not necessarily replace people, but they can accelerate the work we do. And I think that's really where AI is going to help us. I think it's automations, I think it's the customer support side, and then I think it's insights and analytics. These are probably across tech, the top 3 real AI use cases, in my opinion, that are going to drive value. And it's interesting, when we talk about AI, everyone has their own AI. Everyone wants to run their own, own their own, have their own data models and things like that. And it's important that we still give back to the community in some way. And so I saw this article yesterday. I want to call it out briefly. I feel like I'm plugging something here. But it's an open source project that Meta and Crowdstrike announced yesterday or the day before. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The CyberSecEval.
Yep.
I can't say enough how important it is that companies, practitioners, developers, our OEM partners around the globe give something back to the community in open source, because that just shows that you're not just here to get a buck, sell a product, take home a paycheck, grow your company, but you're actually delivering open source tools that enable teams to evaluate their AI, have a benchmark to score it against, see what it looks like against the security operations landscape, and sort of assess yourself. That's what the CyberSecEval is really about. And I think having it as an open source partnership between 2 very different companies, Meta and CrowdStrike, really speaks to both of their commitments. I mean, maybe people would disagree, but both of their commitments towards driving ethical and sort of agnostic solutions that improve the community as a whole.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, Meta gets a lot of heat for a lot of things, Facebook.
Yeah.
But they contributed heavily to OCP along with Microsoft to set data center standards. They open source PyTorch, and they've always been a big contributor to open. React is another example.
Oh yeah.
That came out of Meta. So, but something you said, Stephen, is really interesting. I think of the software industry and how much people talk about software bloat. I think it's just Excel. I used to be an Excel expert. It's like way surpassed my capabilities. But if AI, for instance, could help me take more advantage of the features, you're saying there's a similar dynamic in security tooling where, and we always hear there's a lack of skill sets, and you've got a real maturity model or a bell curve of skills. AI potentially can help individuals or SOCs take advantage of more of those features that they can't necessarily exploit today.
Exactly. The team recently did a CTF. I won't talk too much about it, but one of my team members used AI, and they came home with like 3rd place in this capture the flag event, and because they recognized there were skill shortages that they had, like knowledge gaps, and they said, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to consume an API reference documentation around this challenge in a realistic amount of time to work on this, but I can use AI to sort of enable me as a tool to solve it. Think about it like the hammer versus the nail gun. Do you want someone up there like roof? If you have your roof being replaced, do you want someone coming in like showing up, a big crew, and all they have is hammers, and like not a nail gun in sight? They're going to be there for like 4 days, 5 days, just pounding on your roof all day? No, you want to use the tools available that have been created to innovate and drive real results. And so, I mean, I'm all about that.
So how hands-on do you stay? Because you have really come up through the ranks in this industry. You've done penetration testing and digital forensics in your career. And now you're in the C-suite. You're the person making the decisions and the leader. How do you miss being in the weeds, or how do you stay connected?
I do miss. I'm a tinkerer. I help with some open source projects I contribute to. I like to develop in my free time, but it's a cultural thing that Talak Mandati, he's at CVS, he is one of the tech leaders there. He had this beautiful phrase that I love, and it was, You don't want to micromanage your teams, but you do want to be micro-informed. And so you want to be able to understand the problems that they're working towards, so then that doesn't get lost. Those challenges can get bubbled up to your leadership team, and you can make strategic choices because you know not necessarily every minute detail, but you have a conceptual understanding of what they're working toward. And so I just strive for that, being micro-informed into what their day-to-day operations, the challenges they're facing, how those play into our roadmap and strategy, and I guess I'm hoping that served me.
That's a good leadership mantra.
Some questions around CrowdStrike, if I may. You've had
Yeah.
a partnership with them. I'm interested in, let me start at the North Star. George Kurtz laid out, I don't know if you saw the keynote this morning, security AGI. I was like, interesting. That, we're not there, and he used the full self-driving cars as an analogy. Did that resonate with you? Do you think that is achievable?
I think it's achievable. It's really where I see a lot of companies focusing right now, or I'm hoping they focus, is because the reality is, if you go that approach, a lot of your commoditized pain points can be removed. I mean, AI can help solve, automate, deliver, and it frees up your team to get out of like phishing emails and like little malware pup and PUA alerts to actually go focus on what's important to their mission, which is facilitating growth and delivery for whatever your company's goal is here. Here at MGM Resorts, our goal is to entertain the human race. What a fantastic goal. What a mission statement. I've never heard the like. And when you think about that, my team should be focused on security challenges that take away from that mission. And so if they're spending all their time responding to a phishing email or going through some small piece of like potentially unwanted software installed somewhere or a rogue anomaly, and if we can rule that out as a false positive faster, they can focus on their project delivery, sort of tightening the screws on the ship and making sure that we're where we want to be as an organization. And that's what when I heard George talk about the AGI offer and like the vision there, that's what resonated with me.
So now, presumably part of that is being able to sort of consolidate tooling. George did say not one company can do it all, and we certainly see the partnerships that these guys have with the likes of Zscaler and Okta and others. What are your thoughts on tools consolidation? Are you able to reduce the number of tools in your stack, or even slow the growth of those tools?
Well, as you deploy tools or you bring on products, the big win with a sort of a centralized core, everyone should have some sort of centralized core. There's obviously solutions and all these partners around here that can deliver different use cases and drive value, but I think a centralized core is important because that lets you address policy drift. As you buy new companies, sell new companies, have new business initiatives, bring on new marketing firms, you different campaigns, there's little adjustments that technology has to make to facilitate those things. And the more tooling you have out there, the more places you have to go to adjust the policies from a security prevention side, like a policy enforcement side, the harder it is. And so policy drift is a real thing. There's obviously companies out there that are focused on it. And when you think about the centralized security stack for CrowdStrike, that's one of the big advantages of it, is being able to address policy drift at its core inside the platform.
Thoughts on identity, specifically in the context of agents? How are you thinking about identity and agents?
So with agentic AI, the identity issue becomes compounded. And so something like having a way to manage all of these identities in a centralized way. I mean, just like you would with your IDP, if it's Entra, Okta, Ping, whatever it is, you need a tool for enforcement of those policies, and also as a fail-safe, which is probably, I talk about the identity module probably too much. Maybe it's why George or Mike were like, oh, let's get Steven up there to talk, because I think it's an underutilized module, but it has fail-safes in place. So if a tool has a misconfiguration, you can implement a policy in the CrowdStrike identity module that supersedes that misconfiguration. prompt someone for another multi-factor check where maybe they weren't checked for whatever reason, or restricted, or reset a password, or block the login completely. And so when you think about those responsive actions, you need to be able to apply all of those across your agentic AI, especially when you see it growing into a threat for adversaries, and you're starting to see ransomware leveraging agentic AI through different pipelines across development, like usually directed development pipelines, and also model context protocol, MCP servers. They're poisoning those for agentic AI to grab instructions and then go execute on those and maybe harm your environment. And understanding the access scope, permissions, the identity side is top of mind for everything. And it was for the human side, the non-human side, and now with AI, it's just as important. Well, if not more.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on theCUBE. A pleasure.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Rebecca Knight for Dave Vellante. Stay tuned for more of theCUBE's live coverage of Fal.Con 25. You're watching theCUBE, the leader in enterprise tech news and analysis.